Question: what would you do if your family was taking advantage of your grandma? It all started with a kind gesture that quickly spiraled out of control. My brother and his so-called wife said they needed a place to stay temporarily, just until they got back on their feet after a series of bad choices. They were staying with her sister, but for some reason got kicked out after a month. Go figure. Our mom and dad told them they could stay in the basement apartment, but would have to pay a portion of the bills and a small amount of rent. They weren't having that, so they asked me, and I flat out said no. There was no way I was about to let them stay in my home. My brother's wife had a bad habit of voicing her opinion when no one asked. Let's just say we did not get along. Then they went to Grandma. Now let me just say that my grandma never saw any wrong in her grandkids, and Grandma, being the sweet woman that she was, welcomed them with open arms. Now, in my defense, I did try to warn her that this might not be the best decision, but again, she was Grandma and saw no wrong. But I know my brother and kept a watchful eye. The first month seemed fine, but then month 2 passed, then 3. Fast forward 6 months later, and neither my brother or his wife had a job or were trying to move out. The worst part of it was that no one seemed willing to do anything about it. And they weren't just staying. They were living rent-free, relying on Grandma for everything. Cooking, cleaning, running errands because they didn't have a car. I mentioned it to my dad, and he pretty much blew me off and said, "You know how your brother is." I tried to talk to my grandma about it, but she said they're just having trouble right now and need her help. I watched my 65-year-old grandma go from always smiling and happy to tired and exhausted really quickly. I was more than a little upset, but I didn't know what to do. Both my mom and I tried talking to my brother, but he was all talk, no action. Another couple of months went by, and watching her struggle made me furious. Even worse that no one seemed to notice or care. We all gathered together at my grandma's one Sunday for our family dinner. My brother's wife was supposed to help with the cooking and cleaning, but she just sat there watching my mother, grandmother, and a few other women from our family do everything. I'd had it, so I stood up in front of everyone and pretty much told them they were leeches, and that they were taking advantage of Grandma. You would not believe the anger on my brother's face as he charged at me. After my dad and uncle finally broke me and my brother up, I was surprised that the family wasn't angry with him. But me. Now I had cousins, aunts, and uncles yelling at me. They're family. Grandma loves having them here, they said. You're overreacting. Why make a big deal out of nothing? But I knew the truth. They were angry at me because they didn't want my brother darkening their doorstep and trying to live with them. Later, when my grandma and I were alone, my grandma admitted how tired she was. She said, "I don't want to upset your brother or your father, but I just can't keep up with this anymore." Once again, I went to my family and told them how Grandma felt. But you know how my brother responded. Instead of taking responsibility for using my grandma, he gaslit me. "Oh, she never said that. You're being dramatic as always." His wife had the audacity to join in. Called me names until I asked her why they weren't staying with any of her family. That shut her up. Still, my entire family rallied behind them. Suddenly, my concern for Grandma was framed as me creating a problem where there was no problem. Every time I tried to step in, I was reminded I was overreacting. Even when Grandma told me they'd added internet to her cable bill and refused to pay for it. It was another $80 for a woman on a fixed income. This whole situation made me view my family in a different light. My brother was heartless to do this to his own grandma like this. They knew Grandma couldn't say no. They knew she loved them too much. And now the whole family? Enabling them and gaslighting me in the process. Even worse, my quiet grandma, seeing how they had treated me, was even more hesitant to speak up for herself. I love my family, but watching them drain Grandma while everyone acts like it's normal, it makes my blood boil. I couldn't sit quietly anymore, so I called protective services to help. Yes, this created a huge mess in the family, but now my brother and his loudmouth wife are gone. And guess what? All those family members who'd had so much to say were now suddenly slamming the door on my brother and his wife, saying they didn't have the room or some other excuse. Yeah, right. Not only that, but they said it was my fault that now my brother and his wife were basically homeless. Yes, the family is mad at me, but I can live with a free conscience knowing that I did the right thing for my grandma's sake. She's happy again, and because of that, I can live with myself and my family's anger for me. In the end, my brother finally got up and got a job at a fast food joint no less, and they found a cheap apartment. It just goes to shows what can happen when you hold adults responsible for their actions. Did I do the right thing? So what would you have done in this situation? Would you have put up with your brother's nonsense for so long?